Hi guys, Blackbox here. In this video I'll be explaining everything about the mysterious cost index. When programming the FMS for departure, I'm sure you have come across the title there, cost index, and you might enter some value between 10 and 30 usually, but most people don't really know what this index implies. So let's first have a look at the calculation of the cost index. So the cost index is simply the cost of time divided by the cost of fuel. Now the cost of time is influenced by costs with regard to maintenance and crew costs. Crew costs consisting here the cost for cockpit and cabin crew together. Also included in the cost of time is costs for air traffic control, airport charges, etc. Now the cost of fuel is influenced obviously by the daily jet fuel prices. And here the jet fuel prices paid by an airline may vary from airline to airline depending on whether or not they are doing fuel hedging or fuel cost hedging or not. Usually the cost index is calculated for you by dispatch, and so once you receive your operational flight plan, you'll have the optimum cost index for your flight printed on the OFP. So how would this work for us flight simmers? Well, for example, on SimBrief you actually have an option where you can set the cost index yourself. As you can see, I have set 23 for the cost index here, and from my experience over many years of flying the Airbus, that is pretty much an average value. Okay, so let's get back to the formula. From the formula that you can see, it's obvious that if the fuel price, for example, were to rise whilst the cost of time, i.e. the costs regarding maintenance and crew, remains the same, then the cost index would actually decrease. Therefore, a cost index of 0 equals the maximum range, whilst a cost index of 999 equals the minimum flight time. During flight preparations, the optimum cost index is entered into the FMS, and usually that value is not altered during flight. However, due to operational reasons, for example in order to avoid night curfew hours or to save fuel because the weather at the destination airport has worsened, then the flight crew can manipulate the cost index themselves. And by the way, the only way to adjust the managed speed during flight is by altering the cost index. You cannot directly override the managed speed value. Let me just quickly demonstrate you how the changing of the cost index actually changes the managed speed value. So here we're cruising at 25,000 feet. I've just entered the cost index 0, and that correlates to a managed speed of Mach 0.62 or 255 knots indicated. So as said before, a cost index of 0 gives us the maximum range. Let's dial in 999, and now the speed gets up to Mach 0.80 or 338 knots indicated. And although the maximum Mach number is 0.82, the autoflight system will only get up to 0.80 to leave a certain margin for turbulence, for example. Now let's have a look how this plays out at the maximum cruising level 390. I've just entered the cost index of 0, and now the managed speed goes to Mach 0.76. As you can see, there's still a margin between the managed speed at cost index 0 and the green dot speed. And this is due to the fact that the formula divides cost of time by cost of fuel. It's not just strictly a performance calculation. Or to say it differently, the green dot speed is the speed where the aircraft has the best lift to drag ratio. It doesn't calculate anything about costs. Now the cost index 999 is easily explained. Again, it's Mach 0.80, giving us the 0.02 Mach buffer to MMO, the maximum operating Mach number. Okay, so let's quickly recap. The cost index is the cost of time divided by the cost of fuel. So if the cost of time remains the same and the fuel prices rise, the cost index will decrease. Should the cost of fuel remain the same, but the cost of time increase, then the cost index will also increase in order to reduce the all-overall flight time. And that is because, as we've seen, a cost index of 0 will reduce the speed drastically, and a cost index of 999 will drastically increase the cruising Mach number. And again, the only way to change the Econ cruise speed is by changing the cost index. You cannot change the managed speed by directly entering a speed value in the FMS. Now let's pretend you have a lot of passengers on board which have very tight connecting flight schedules at the destination airport, and your company tells you to increase the speed in order to make sure that those passengers actually have a better chance of reaching their onward flights. In this case, you would increase the cost index in the FMS. Right, let's go the opposite way. You've just learned that your destination airport has been closed because of thunderstorm activity, and so you want to preserve fuel as much as possible. In this case, you would reduce the cost index maybe all the way down to 0. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I would like to say about the cost index now. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. As always, leave a like or subscribe, and then I'll see you in the next one. Until then, happy landings.